Oh, no, it's not. Now, so that it doesn't interrupt Mehalah's presentation when she is speaking. I will continue to beaver away in the background, bringing in anybody that's any stragglers that are at the end of the queue to join us. But in the meantime, can I please introduce Mehalah Beckett from Connect Three, who will be leading today's session. Mehalah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Pleasure to see all your faces. It's lovely to see some of you on video. I really appreciate that. Thank you. While I'm going to get a little presentation up on the screen, while I'm doing so, would you all warm up your fingers? This will be a slightly interactive session. And would you put either a word or a phrase into the chat? What comes to mind when I say environment and business? No wrong answer here. Be interested to hear what's in the room already. Critical opportunity, stewardship. What else have we got? Symbiosis. Oh, nice word. Environment and business needs a systems approach. Phrase. Net zero. Yeah. Bureaucracy. Yeah. Responsibility. There we go. Snap. Waste. And two opportunities. Everything comes in pairs, isn't it? Stewardship. That's a nice word. An industry question mark. I like it. All right, well, I think it's good to feel what's in the room, and I'm sure many of these words are gonna come up. And maybe if I remember, I'll ask you at the end and see if it's changed at all. So welcome. We are Institute Directors and Connect Three are collaborating on this event today. The E of ESG, environmental sustainability, and what it means for business. What is it? What the benefits are, opportunities and risks. And I'm just going to move you so I can see my slides. So welcome, my name is Mehalah Beckett, and for those of you that haven't met me in the last call, I lead the sustainability work at Connect Three. As a brief background for me, I'm an economist by background. I'm based up in Glasgow because I bought a flat during the days I worked for the Department for International Development, so the UK's aid sector government department. I then went to the private sector and worked as a director at Intrepid Travel, directing 4 companies across sub-Saharan Africa. I then trained as a professional coach and a B Corp consultant, and B Corp is a sustainability certification, which we might mention later. And I'm Scotland co-chair of the B Corp community, Sustainable Business Community. So I'm working with businesses to grow in a sustainable way, looking after their people, looking after the planet, and talking all things sustainable growth. And just to tell you how this work fits into Connect Three. So Connect Three are a people and business consultancy. We work with leaders to help them build really healthy businesses that are great places to work. So we do a lot of work on business growth. We take a very much people-first approach, lots of leadership work. And our ESG consultancy sits in our future work life, along with EDI and innovation and company culture. So just to show you the full suite of things we work across, and we don't see any of these things as being separate. So we're going to be talking about sustainable business growth here from a people first, from a planet first point of view, strongly focused on what makes sense for business too. So we're on a mission to make the planet a better place, both to live and to work. And we're really excited that you're joining with us in this today, and that you'll come on our journey with us. And just to say, we are a certified B Corp. We've got certified to uphold high standards of social and environmental sustainability. It doesn't mean we're perfect. It means that we're making good progress, and we like to practice what we preach. And we're really proud to share that with others. So if anyone would like any more information on B Corp, I'm really happy to answer questions on that afterwards. And these are some of the companies that we work with. So on to today. These are the learning outcomes that I'd love you to get from today. So basically a bit of knowledge. It's not going to be huge on teaching today, but perhaps you'll come away with what environmental sustainability is, its benefits, some of the barriers that you may share with other people in the room, common barriers, and actually some of the opportunities that you'll be able to take advantage of as a result. I'd like to spark some ideas in you for your business, where you could be focusing on in terms of environmental sustainability, what works for your people, how you can positively impact the planet as well as protect it, and what will make sense for your business in terms of profitability. So be open to ideas. And then some confidence to make a start or to take that next step in your sustainable growth journey. Not to do all the things and be perfect at it, but basically my aim today is for you to come away with, okay, this is the next thing I want to take some action on. If there are other things you want to get out of today, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat as we go along. I can't see the chat when I'm presenting, but perhaps, Catherine, if you see any questions that would be really good, just unmute yourself. Otherwise, there will be time for Q&A at the end. So I'll let you judge on that, and no worries in interrupting me, anybody. I don't want to just be talking at you. So before we get into some of the chunky subjects, and for those of you that were at the last session, there's a little bit of crossover, but I thought they were good questions, so I'm going to ask them again. So a little bit of true and false. So you've already got your fingers warmed up, and I'd like you to bring your fingers back out again into the chat. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I'd love a guess at whether it's true or whether it's false. And don't be shy, this is a bit of fun, and there may not even be a right or wrong answer, but we'll see, shall we? So, first question, environmental regulation is coming, true or false? What do we think? True, true, true. Lots of truths. Got a false. Anyone else want to? False, it's here already. Yeah, was it a trick question? That's the question. Already here, true. Trick questions already here. Okay. I mean, it's a big question, isn't it? Let's be honest. But if I'm going to take a punt one way or the other, I'm going to say true. And if you think about all of the environmental regulation that is already in place, I mean, there are all sorts of regulations for businesses about what you can and can't do in terms of the environment. So for those that said trick question is already there, you're absolutely right. There already is plenty of regulation. And if you were one of the larger companies in the UK, more than 500 staff, publicly listed, more than 500 million in revenue, you are already required to report on some climate risk disclosures. If you are a smaller company and you don't fall into some of the standard environmental health, etc., environmental emissions, then you may not have to report on much right now, but it's work in progress, and the sustainability disclosure standards are expected by July of next year, which will set in place some standards that may later turn into regulation. But let's not wait, hey? Let's get on the front foot, and some of you will be already complying to some environmental standards, so let's not wait for that. We'll come back to this when we talk a little bit about risk and resilience. All right, question 2. Investing in more sustainable practices in your business is not good business. True or false? Not good business. Contextual. Can't get you to commit either way. False, 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 false in general. False, false, false. Got lots of believers here, I can see. Mostly false, yeah. As I say, there may not be pure right and wrong here. Cost versus benefits, false. Okay, great. So generally false, but some questions in there, which is absolutely fair enough. I'm going to say false with a rider on that. So there's I've been looking at recent studies that have actually looked at business performance in different ways and looking at businesses that have been seen to be showing more sustainable practices in different ways. I'm happy to give the references for these afterwards. So I just wanted to pull out to show you the range. Products that have been more sustainably marketed compared to their alternatives are actually growing 2.7 times faster than their alternatives in the last few years. I think that was a NYU study. So in terms of products, pretty good. 56% of staff are more inclined to stay at a company that's actually taking sustainable action. More than half, not all the way. So it's good for employee retention. In terms of early startup survival, environmentally focused startups are twice as likely to survive their initial startup phase than non-environmentally focused startups. So in terms of resilience, this is a pretty good thing for startups. And what's interesting, 48% of new product pitches include sustainability. So people are seeing it as something important to put in terms of getting investment for their goods. Now, where I saw a lot of contextually, maybe, well, you can invest in the wrong things and you can do things badly. So it's making sure that investing in sustainable practices are aligned to your business and that you're doing them in the right way. So of course, not any old practices are going to be good for your business, but those that have invested in it, we found some really good research to say it's good for your product, it's good for your employees, it's good for resilience, and it's good for getting investment. Some really good research coming out. Okay, finally, question 3. Environmental sustainability is more of a cost than an investment opportunity. True or false? Depends why you were doing it. Yeah, true, often, false. Again, in general, neither. It's a necessity. Oh, I like that. False. Depends. Yep. And these are really just to spark some discussion. So I'm not attached to being right or wrong on these. False, true. Okay, so a little bit more discussion around that. Investments by definition are near-term costs. You are absolutely right, Heather. Yeah. Okay, we'll keep them coming. Well, I had to pick a side, so I went with false. Now, obviously, if you are investing in something, you are right. You are making an official investment. There is a cost attached. I think what's interesting is some of the research by McKinsey. I just picked out one of their stats just to demonstrate. McKinsey estimates that there's between 9 and 12 trillion in sustainability investment opportunities between now and 2030. That's not very far away. Now, of course, that means companies are going to have to actually invest, but they're seeing that there's going to be really good returns on those investments that investors will be interested in. Now, of course, same caveat as before, you need to be investing in the right things. But they're seeing a huge reallocation of capital and opportunities from the fact that businesses are going to be changing and there are opportunities there. So just to spark a little bit of debate, have a think about what that might mean for your business, for your industry.
Mehalah, I'm going to just cut in very quickly there because there's a question from Simon in the chat asking about the credibility of McKinsey after recent dramas. I just thought it would be worth picking that up.
I guess it depends whether you're talking about, I guess that piece of research seemed robust, and I guess I'm just looking at the credibility of their piece of research. Whether we want to just look at McKinsey and their opinions, I guess, is something else. And I guess that's for us to do the wide-ranging research, but yeah, very important. Thank you for bringing that up. So I'm not going to go over huge detail on the S and the G today, but just as a brief recap from the last session, what is ESG? Well, you're here, so you probably know what it is, but we're talking about the environment, we're talking about social impact, and we're talking about good governance. And at Connect 3, we're very much looking at 3 holistically. So today we're going to be focused on the environmental side, and I'm not going to go into detail on all of these, but we will go into risk and adaptation and resilience. We will look at resources and waste, and we will have a look into carbon, because I think there are some of the bigger things within the environmental. So we're going to pop into those in a minute, but it's just worth me showing you that people play a huge role in sustainable growth and sustainability and looking after our people and the planet. So we can't leave the social out of this. In the same way that governance really is the great starting point, because you need to set your business up for success and you need to maintain that level of success. So if you are interested in digging into the S and the G, we will be going through everything social impact, and we'll channel in on a couple of the big ones on November 1st. So if you're not booked into that, come along. We will look at how you can create social impact through your customers, through your employees, and for your employees, how you can create it through your supply chain and your value chain, and we can look at advocacy and local charitable giving and action. This is what we're calling social impact. It's really broad, so we'll only deep dive into a couple, but if you're interested in looking at the social impact side, come along November 1st, and then on November 16th, we'll dig into the governance enablers. So looking at your business vision and purpose, type of business model, how you set up to create that value. We'll look at boards and leadership, decision-making practices, materiality assessments. We might do a little exercise around those, and looking at impact measurement and reporting. So I'm not going to delve into those any more than this, but just to say those 3 for us come together, and we see sustainable business as all 3 holistically. But today we're going to delve into the environment. And I've picked 2 kind of broad topics to go into today, and then 2 more narrow ones. And it's just really starting a conversation and getting ideas. And you're welcome to ask me deeper questions later. But I thought the best place to start was resilience and adaptation. When we think about environment and business, I think a lot of people's mind jump straight to the, resource management, got to reduce my impact. And that's really important. And it came up a lot at the beginning when I asked you to put some words in. But some people also talked about systems and governance. And actually, the other side is, well, if we're talking about environmental issues, climate change, resource depletion, then there's a really good place to start in terms of looking at identifying the risks and opportunities for our business. You'll already have a risk register if you're a certain size, or maybe for a small business, it's up here. What should I be worrying about in terms of my business? Or what am I not worrying about that I should be worrying about? And I think it's really good to start with environment and, well, what are the risks and the opportunities now? And there might be risks in terms of physical risks to your business. So, for example, I'm working with a clothing company who had a great summer line, probably done by about February of this year. And then we had a really poor summer, didn't we? And they didn't sell almost any of the items they were expecting to sell in terms of summer clothes. I don't suspect that was highly on the risk register, that weather would have such an impact on the profitability and revenue of their business this summer. I'm also working with a travel company that had bad weather outcomes on their risk register. They're a global travel company, there's always something happening. But they did not expect to cancel so many trips in Europe this year because of the wildfires. And it was only, I think, when the CEO had a trip with his mum planned that was cancelled over the summer on a Greek island, that I think it really hit home that, wow, climate change is this is a bigger thing than we thought. And it's going to be a bigger contributor to our physical risk in our business. So let's start to identify them. And what are the opportunities off the back of that? What trips can we develop which will be more resilient, which will have us ahead of our competitors? I'm sure the clothing company is now doing the same. So physical risks, they may be easy to identify. How about the transition risks? So in you transitioning, for example, to net zero, in you transitioning to zero waste, what are the risks there? What are the opportunities there? And we'll come to some opportunities later when we delve into and also in that regulation that I brought up. What are the risks to you not complying, for you not to be ready, for you not to got the advice ready? So it's worth looking at those. There will be more regulation coming in. There has to be. And then reputationally, I'm sure we can all think of some companies, McKinsey, for example, that in getting it wrong or in not taking action or not communicating it effectively, that there's been some risks there. And then you can probably also think of some companies that in starting to be open and transparent and taking action in a really open way, they've done wonders for the way that we think about them and the way that we like to give them brand loyalty. So there's a downside and there's an upside. And until you start to think about these three different types of risks in terms of environmental sustainability, it's a really good place to start. So I'd recommend everyone has a start there. And then once you've identified those risks, those opportunities, where do they fit into your strategy? By all means, have a thinking about environmental strategy, but I really mean, once you've had a thought about them, how do they come into your business strategy? How will you be resilient in the long term, despite climate change, despite resource depletion? How will you take advantage of those opportunities that have come on to move your business forward, to look after people, planet, and your bottom line better? And then transparency and reporting, I think, just as an overarching thing, how are you going to talk about it in a way that's going to improve your reputation and not diminish it, in a way that's going to hold you accountable for taking the action to reduce your risks and take advantage of the opportunities that are out there, and create that brand loyalty and trust that you really need to? I'm happy to answer more questions on that. I think that's always a good place to start before we delve into more technical issues. And I guess the other place to start is environmental management. You will be coming from all different kinds of businesses here. What's material, what's important to one business will not be material to another. So for that travel company I've been working with, carbon is a really material issue to them. They are flying people all around the world, and they were taking people throughout countries. It's a bit less material to the clothing company I'm working with, but they're still flying things from Bangladesh to London to sell in Kensington. It's going to be less material for some of the consultancies I'm working for. However, everyone's got a role to play. So before you start delving into, we need a net zero plan, we need a net waste to landfill, have a think, what's material to you, what's important to you, what should we take action on next? You don't have to take action on everything at the same time. So what's important to you? And then systems, how can you set yourselves up for success? How will you measure where you are at the moment? How will you set goals, and how will you track progress against them? So it's not just something that sits in someone's drawer somewhere. How will you get the whole company involved and make sure you're taking systemic action on it? Someone mentioned systems earlier, which I think is a really nice word. And then finally, how do you make sure that you actually take action on these things? So who's going to be made responsible for these? How is it integrated into everyone's job roles, everyone's strategies? And where are you going to be transparent about the things that you want to take action on? How are you going to use your stakeholders, your customers, your staff, your investors to hold you accountable for managing your environmental resources better? So I think these are all good things to be thinking about before you delve into the detail. And they help to highlight what's important and how you can easily start to take action on these and get everyone on board so it's not one person's job. Any questions at the moment? Are we okay to move on?
Apologies, there's a longer question that's just come through, and I'm just reading through to make sure there's no question in there, but no, it's a comment rather than a question.
Right, so I'll come back to that at the end when we've got some time. Brilliant. All right, so I thought I would delve into two deep dives into two issues. Obviously, environmental management is huge, but let's focus on two, and I think we can take some transferable lessons from these to other things. So carbon, it may be more material to some companies than others, but we've all got a part to play in making sure that our planet doesn't burn up and we still have a planet, right? There's no doing business on a planet that doesn't exist. So I guess three things that might be useful for you. If you haven't even started, start to think about your energy and things you can just easily measure to have a look at your baseline. How much energy does your company use? How much is renewable? Can you look at energy efficiency? Can you look at reduction plans in-house as a starter? But really what we need to be doing is moving on to looking at your greenhouse gas emissions, which might be measuring it in-house. And I'm happy to suggest some free carbon calculators. There are many other people that will do it for you for a fee, just to get a feel for, well, is this material? Where is my carbon footprint actually coming from? Then you might want to look at your carbon intensity, which is your carbon footprint compared to your revenue. So it might be that at first, as you grow, your carbon may be going up, but is it coming down? Are you becoming more efficient in your use of carbon? Is it coming down per your revenue? How can you get it down even as you grow? So hopefully you guys are all looking for some sustainable growth. You can then look at your supply chain. You can find out whether they're measuring their carbon footprint, what their best practice is, whether you can encourage them, work with them, and look at the greenhouse gas emissions, the carbon emissions across your value chain. Once you've got your own house in order, don't start asking them before you've done some work in this. Must be practicing what you preach. And then what's the first step in the Holy Grail is getting a net zero plan. Now, obviously, that's still just the start. You've got to take action on it. And net zero means a 90% reduction in your emissions by 2050. So whatever your carbon balance is right now, you're looking to reduce it by 90%, which is huge. And 2050 is not that far away. The remainder you can offset or hopefully remove it. Technology is getting better and better at removing it. So hopefully we won't be offsetting in the near future. We'll actually be removing carbon. Options are becoming available. And if you don't know where to start, we partner with Small 99, and there's totally free source net zero scorecard. So perhaps some of you, it'd be interesting to hear, actually, maybe put in the chat how many of you have got a net zero plan, how many of you are starting to measure your carbon, how many of you just starting to look at your energy. It'd be really nice to see where we are on this journey. There's no right or wrong answer, as long as you, or whether you're just committing to start on your journey after this. We've got a net zero scorecard, which identifies material areas that you might start to look at. You just ask a few questions. There's no putting all your financial data in or going through all your spreadsheets. But it will give you some areas that you might start to look at. So this was a small consultancy business we looked at, and they looked at your energy and buildings, questions around the transport, your supply chain, your waste, your water, your advocacy, supporting others, and your carbon offsetting. And for this company, it looked like they were doing really well on the advocacy and the carbon offsetting, maybe shouting about the carbon offsetting they were doing, hadn't really looked at their buildings or their transport or their supply chain, didn't really know anything about their waste or water. I don't think they measured it. So therefore wouldn't be able to start to take action on reducing it. And I wonder, you know, for those that are on the call, looking at those 7 things, where do you think you could start to delve in and look at sort of measuring your carbon, look at reducing? Where do you think your priority area is for reducing your carbon within those 7 things? I'm happy to share the link to this really simple tool afterwards, just to get you to think about, actually, this is a material area for me. This is where I might make a start. I'm happy to come back to that later as you do. The other subject I just wanted to introduce was waste. I mean, again, it's a really big subject. All different types of waste we can look at, and you might think this is only relevant for you if you're a product business, because you're making something, you're providing something, you're putting something out in the world. But even if you're a service business, even if you are in your living room working from home, there's going to be waste within your company. You're going to be buying some things, consuming some things. So start with everything. Start to measure, where are we right now? What's our total waste that this company is putting out there? What's going to landfill versus being recycled, perhaps, versus being reused? How much toxic waste do we put out there? What are we doing about it? What about electronic waste? Laptops, mouse, you know what I mean? And then look at your supply chain. So it's not just you. What about all the providers before you? What are they providing? How can you work with them better? And then we can either reduce the waste or we can improve it. So by reducing it, how can you reduce the inputs? Where one of the companies I was working with, they're a jeans company, and they were looking at how they could source reduce, put as little as possible into those jeans, so that the final output, if it was wasted, will at least be smaller than it started off. Strip back packaging, extend your product life. So maybe those jeans could last 3 generations and they would never get into waste. Can you improve your suppliers' performance in terms of waste, or do you actually need to switch suppliers? Are there better people to be working with that would cause less waste to go into landfill? And then there's actually improve. So how can you improve the inputs to what you're making, if you are making something, or if you're even just buying things in for your office? Can you buy something with biodegradable inputs, so that if it has to go to landfill, if it can be recycled, that it biodegrades sooner? Take back schemes, really good. How can you make it really easeful for your customers, for your clients, for your consumers to give them back, so that you can either reuse them, remodel them, sell them on, create a new revenue line, a new market, create value for another company then to do something too. Really great options in the circular economy model if you just think about it. Or perhaps you have a repair business and you send it back to the same consumer, or perhaps you rent it out. Perhaps you join the sharing economy and there is no waste, just constant repair and recycling around the system. So plenty of opportunities there, as well as chance to reduce impact. Any questions on that before I move on? All good. So I think we've already alluded to these, that in case you weren't sure, there are many benefits of being more friendly to the planet, more environmentally sustainable. So first of all, it's going to reduce your risk of negative shocks. If you are looking at what are the shocks to the business environmentally to us, and we're adding those into our risk registers, adding those into our strategic plans, if we are taking advantage of them as well as managing them, we're going to be more resilient into the future. Going to come up with some more innovative products and processes. I've had consultancies that have added sustainability consultancy to their own products because they found they're practicing it, so why not add it as a service? I've had physical companies add in repair and rental services, and I've had other companies that have been able to sell their waste onto another company or recycle it within their system. So loads of innovative both products and the way you make things that can not only give you efficiency savings and cost savings, but can actually create new markets, new customers, appeal to new people, enhance your productivity, and actually boost investor confidence, because you will be resilient into the future. You are minimizing your costs, you're creating new markets, you're innovative. So it's a whole new way of looking at business. How can we take this as an opportunity to look at being a more resilient business and making the most of all these wonderful resources that we've got available to us, to be more resourceful, because we need to be, and let's not let it be something that is in the too hard box or in the too boring box or in the bureaucracy box. Let's see this as an opportunity for how we can be better. However, there are many barriers to getting started on this journey, and many barriers once you've got so far. Perhaps you've got a net zero plan. Oh, I've actually got to take some steps. I've actually got to get going on this. So I'm gonna share 3 of them with you, and you can let me know if I've missed any. So there is relevance. It's not relevant to me, this whole like net zero, this whole circular economy. I'm a service-based business. I'm too small. My carbon footprint's low. I'm going to be fine. I don't think I need to take any action on this, which probably isn't anyone on this call, because you're all on this call because you're interested, I'm guessing, at least in thinking about taking action. So I'm sure this isn't you, but there's plenty of businesses out there that just like, oh no, I think we're fine, thanks. Time. Let's get to knowledge first. Maybe you think, well, actually it is relevant for us. I do travel quite a lot as a business. We do seem to have a lot of waste, but I don't really know what to do about it. So maybe I'll go on a webinar, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'm too busy. I don't really know what to do. So I'll just sit on it a bit. And I know it's a risk that probably should be on my risk register, but it will get there later. And then there's time. I know it's relevant for me. I actually know what to do. I know I need to look at our waste practices. I know I need to measure our carbon and see how we can reduce it, but I just don't seem to have time. I keep saying I'll do it on a Sunday afternoon, and then fortunately I spend a Sunday afternoon in the forest with my family, and I don't look at my resource use. And those 3 things together, there's inertia. There's just that slight feeling that maybe you could be doing something, but you're not. Would anyone like to add anything to those 3 barriers? Presumption of added burden and stress. Yeah, sounds like it's in the too hard box, doesn't it? Different views and different cultures. Interesting. Cynicism and hostility as a distraction. Any others? Funding. Interesting. Yeah. So needing some external funding to help with resilience, to help with adaptation. Of work up front, waiting time for the benefits. Yeah, if you see it as a long-term benefit. We're all impatient by nature, aren't we? Too big to get your head around. Yeah, there's too much. And I really thought about how much to share on this webinar. Because too much information, a confused mind doesn't take action, does it? Near-term funding for SMEs. Yeah. Okay. So what I haven't put here is cost. And it's a barrier I tend to get quite a lot. We don't have the money. And I think I'm gonna put a poll up in a minute, or Catherine's gonna kindly put a poll up in a minute, maybe, if we can get the tech to work. And I've added cost in, but I only want you to use the cost one if genuinely you know it's relevant to you, you know what you need to do, you have the time, but you just don't have the money for it. Not just, I think it might be a bit expensive. Does that sound good? So I'd love to ask you, if you don't mind, and I did ask on the last webinar, so for anyone on that one, I apologize. I like asking this question. So would you mind putting the poll up, Catherine? Is it possible?
It's not possible. I'm so sorry, Mehalah. We're still logged in on the other device, so the poll is inactive right now.
Okay, no worries. Okay, well, then we'll do this. Plan B, put in the chat, what's your biggest barrier to getting started or to taking the next step? Is it relevance? Is it time? Is it knowledge? Or is it genuinely cost? As in, we actually know what to do, but we don't have the money for it. Would you bung it in the chat for me? We can go the low-tech version. All good. Resource. So as in cost, time and resources, resource. People time. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Someone to actually do it. Perception of value or lack of it. So perhaps it's the relevance piece and the cost piece, maybe knowledge and priorities. Yeah. Knowing what is the most important thing to take action on next is really important. Time and staff resource. Lots on the time. That's interesting. Any more for any more? Great, so a good mix of things there. I think most of you know it's relevant, so that's great. So preaching to the partially converted, hopefully. So, I mean, you were all probably at different stages. Some of you, and this is kind of how we at Connect Three see the ESG journey. Some of you will know where you are now, and some of you won't quite know yet. But you're interested, you're curious, right? You're willing to connect the dots and think, okay, where are we now? Where are we now in terms of our climate risk and resilience and adaptation? Where are we in terms of environmental management? Where are we in terms of identifying one or two things we could start to take action on in terms of reducing our impact and also in having a positive impact on the planet? And we'd love to share our ESG diagnostics. So those of you that don't know, at least have a quick stab at it. And for those of you that really want to dig into it, I'm happy to share a link to the B Corp Impact Assessment, which is a much bigger assessment to give you a really good idea of where you are holistically across sustainability. Strategy, do you know where you need to get to? Have you figured out how you want to be a better company for the world, how you'd love to be a better business? Do you know what's material to you? And have you got a sustainability strategy, which then follows into your main strategy? Do you know what action you want to take? Is it taking action on your net zero? Is it looking at opportunities in terms of circular economy? Or is it just mitigating and taking advantage of some of those risks? And then impact. How will you know you're succeeding? How will you know when you are a better business, when you're being a better business for people and planet? What goals might you need to set? Who needs to be reporting on those? And how will you communicate this great impact to the world to make sure it is an opportunity and not a risk? So we're all somewhere along that journey. And this is something that we support businesses in. So you might be at stage one, you might be struggling with slow growth, poor competitiveness, perhaps low staff morale. You might be losing tenders. You might not be able to apply for tenders because you're requiring a climate plan, because you're applying a fair work policy. And you might just be not quite sure what's missing. Perhaps it's time to have a look at where you're doing really well and where are some of the gaps. You might be at stage two, and probably a lot of you are. You're kind of ready to work on a more sustainable business plan. You're ready to take action, just not quite sure where to start. And perhaps after today, you've got a few ideas of where you can start, at least start thinking about what might be most material to you and where the opportunities might be for you. You might be much further along your business journey. You might be taking loads of strides in environmental sustainability, and you might be actually thinking more about, okay, so where do the opportunities come in? Let's bring those payoffs much closer to us and actually start to take advantage of some of those opportunities. In which case you might be ready to go through the B Corp certification and identify some of the best practice areas you could be growing into next. We are all at different stages. The important thing is that you're here and that you're learning and you're open to sustainable growth. And we've got a free open source tool. It's just 16 questions, ESG diagnostic tool, and it covers more than environmental. There's a few questions on environmental, a few questions on social impact, and a few questions on good governance. So we can put the link in the chat in a moment, but there's also a QR code. So you're very welcome to have a look and just get a feel for actually what can we celebrate in terms of environmental sustainability and social impact, and it will give you some tips as to where to go next, because I do think that it's just, if you can just take the next step, then you'll gain momentum and you'll be able to make progress. Yeah, let's make a change together. We're on this journey, we're on this mission ourselves. We are not perfect, we're making progress, and we're happy to share that with other people and connect and share our successes and our failures and our learnings and support you along your journey, whatever that next step may be. So really happy to connect, and hopefully I've left decent time for questions, discussions, reflections, challenges, whatever makes sense.
You have indeed, and we have a question that we can open the floor with. David, do you want to come in and ask your question directly rather than me stumbling over it?
Thanks, Catherine. I might stumble over it myself. It's part of a bigger, wider question, I guess, is that when, especially those who are offering tenders, large companies, public sector, big initiatives, big budget things, I mean, they obviously use tenders. And in the past, that's been pretty not straightforward. Has it ever been straightforward? But akin to the likes of BS 5750 and all that kind of stuff, where where the buyer asked the would-be supplier for their credentials in terms of their quality standards, etc. When given that tenders are a fraught process anyway, or indeed selling anything can be a fraught process, how can the buyer ensure that the supply chain and the suppliers are adhering to good ESG principles all the way down their supply chain? Because I just think, it was hard enough to do with BS 5750, which was a lot of BS. Never mind the 5750 part of it. But this is much more important than BS 5750. I guess my question, as I said, I'm stumbling over it, is that whole amount of work, not just for the would-be supplying company itself, but it's got its own supply chain. It's trying to supply to others, and that's a huge ecosystem to check out and audit and police. I just wondered how this is going to be done, because I think it's going to be a real hard task, especially for SMEs to do that, who don't have tendering departments and all the rest of it, and that kind of resource.
So, and as a small consultancy, yes, we feel you. I feel like we're always putting tenders in, and making sure that what we say in our tender documents we can back up with something. We can back up with a certification. We can back up with a strategy or a plan or statistics. I think at the moment there is lots of space to say, yes, we've got a net zero plan. Yes, we've got a climate resilience plan. Yes, we have. And are big organizations and or public sector organizations able to check that? I don't think generally they are. So at the moment, I think it's down very much to trust. So it depends on the integrity of those submitting. I think there is a place here, therefore, for certifications, for regulations, for standards, which makes it much easier for someone to say, and here's our proof that we were looked at X years ago, hopefully not too long ago, and we comply to this. Because otherwise, I mean, there's all sorts of things around at the moment, which is why they're looking at bringing something together to have some minimum standards. And that's why some businesses are just saying, actually, I don't want to wait for that, and I don't want just minimum standards. So some companies are going for having a net zero plan when they don't need to, are going for B Corp certification when they don't need to, because it basically says, look, we're a B Corp certified, we've got high standards of social, come and have a look at it. And insert other certifications, etc. If you've got an ISO, then that is well regarded and well known. Okay, you must have been doing some good things in that space. Brilliant. So I think we're going to have to move in that space to make it more easeful. But in terms of agreeing on what the acceptable ones be, that's also quite an industry in itself. And fortunately, I'm not part of that. Happy to advise on that, but I'm certainly not part of it. I don't know if that helps. Good question. And so I've just seen your quote, how about ISO 14000 series as a basis rather than new standards? Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've got plenty of things out there, and it's a case of, well, what looks like a good level of certification and what doesn't. I don't think we need to recreate the rule. The problem is there are lots of different things, and I'm most familiar with B Corp. There are other alternatives, and B Corp, for example, takes into account which ISOs you've got and what fair work you've got, and etc. I think it's a case that it's been externally audited and to be trustful and reliable. I think that's the important thing. What else do we have in here? Any other questions around anything I've shared? Anything, I mean, there's a lot I didn't talk about. Anything glaring obvious that I should have mentioned? Feel free to pitch in.
Stunned into silence with the volume of information that's been coming forward. I don't know about you guys, but my hand hurts from note taking, and then I reminded myself that A, we're recording the session, and B, we'll be sharing the recording and the slides. So just to clarify that for everybody as well, we will be doing a follow-up email, and we will provide a further link to the diagnostic tool in that follow-up email too.
Great. And thank you for Wendy, who's put the public sector tools on sustainable procurement are free on the government website. It might help some. It should help some. That's brilliant. Thank you for putting that in, Wendy. And just to say, have a think back to those learning objectives. Have you learned something? Has it sparked some ideas? And what I'd love you to put in the chat, if you don't mind, because sometimes just committing it to pen and paper, committing it to the screen might help. What's the next step you might take? What's the next step you will take? Is it looking into something? Is it reviewing something? Is it kicking off something? Or what idea have I sparked that you want to explore more? Seeing more external auditors offering reports as part of their annual audits. Yeah, I mean, the financial bodies are increasingly getting interested on this, and that's great. Money does make the world go round, and what you need to comply to in terms of financial, that's going to be the way in. And the new sustainability standards will be in line with IFRS, international reporting. So I think this is how it's all going to come together. But let's not wait to be regulated. Hey, let's take some positive actions and proactive action. Tightening ESG alignment with purpose. Yeah, I'd love to know what that is, David Hood. Any more action? Any things that people are going to be looking into? House in order and starting reporting alongside our financials. Yeah, I mean, an integrated report is wonderful. You can report on more than your finances. If you can report on how you're creating value through your people, through your stakeholders, through your customers, that's really good practice to get into. And just celebrate the good work you're doing and the good work you'd like to do. Having go beyond required reporting. Show individuals homeowners to make a small difference on this fight. Absolutely. Gathering better data, yeah, finding out where you are before you can figure out where you want to go. Yeah, I think it is taking that sustainability strategy and put it into the strategy. We need everyone's eyes and attention on it, and it to be part of everyone's job role, and not just that sustainability professional or point whatever of a person. All right, well, if there are no further questions or comments, then I can give you back 10 minutes of your day. Do spend those 10 minutes wisely. Kick off that action maybe. And we will share the recording and the ESG diagnostic. I think it will take you 7 minutes. So you've probably got 7 minutes now if you want to. And I'll hand back over to Catherine. Thank you.
Mehalah, thank you very much again, as ever, for what was a really engaging and insightful session. I do hope that those of you who are here are able to join us for the follow-up S and G sessions, which from memory are 12:30 on the 1st of November and 12:30 on the 16th of November. Details are available on the IOD Scotland website, so if you have not, please do sign up and join us for those sessions. We will be in touch with a follow-up email on the back of today's session, but in the meantime, thank you very much, and go and enjoy some lunch and a cuppa before your 1:30, because I'm sure everybody's got one of those. Take care. Thanks everybody.
See you.